Hello and welcome to Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm here today with Brian Ortiz, who I have been following on LinkedIn, and he has built a growing audience. I think he's just passed 70,000 followers. It's really taking off, and every time Brian posts, he's getting like 1,000 comments and a million plus views. Brian, welcome to the show.
Will, fantastic to be here, sir.
So, Brian, you have been posting stuff about, all sorts of resources around. Here's a list of every family office in the universe. Here's a list of, venture capital firms, or here's, various tools for investors. Lots of stuff around startups, and you're getting tons of engagement. I have so many questions for you. I guess my first is, tell us a little bit about your history and about what your objective function is with this LinkedIn audience building that you've been doing. What is what are you trying to accomplish with it? And just give us some context there.
So my history, I guess I started off as a marketing person late last century to date myself in early 2000s here. So I actually owned a marketing agency, one of the largest marketing agencies in the U.S. Two and a half decades ago. That was kind of the start of my career. It was interesting because LinkedIn was always there. I remember it was just kind of latent in the background. I had like maybe 500, 1,000 followers. From marketing, I branched off and became an investor. So I was focused on actually real estate investing. So I did residential real estate investing in Connecticut. And I guess some people would call that taking a decade off, because essentially I was out of the corporate realm. I sold all of my properties. Now it's about 3 years ago. So 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I decided to re-enter the corporate world, and I started looking at LinkedIn as an avenue to kind of expand my investment opportunities. I've always been a marketing guy, so the thought of being on LinkedIn intrigued me on what was actually possible. I saw some people with good engagement, 30,000 followers, 40,000 followers. I came across you, Will, with one of your posts that went viral. That sparked an interest in me to dive a little bit deeper. The first post that I did that did well was unexpected. I guess you would consider it, and people on LinkedIn considered it a contrarian type post. That seemed to spark some debate. I got maybe 60 or 100 comments and said, hey, I might be onto something. And then from there, as you mentioned, a lot of my philosophy is offering people access to certain resources that they may not have an easy time finding on their own. So once I started getting into offering resources and access to those, that's when things really picked up this year. There have been some days where I probably gotten upwards of 5,000 or 6,000 inbound messages coming in. There was a day where I think I got almost 10,000 connection requests in one day. So it lends itself to getting organized is a high priority there, because you don't want to have 40,000 people waiting for you to get back to them. So I use a series of CRM systems to help me out with that.
Okay, I want to hear about some of that, and about some of the mechanics behind that. So, and before we recorded, you were telling me that one of the objective functions is, before you started this LinkedIn kind of publishing, you were getting 1 or 2 inbound requests per week, of pitch decks. But now you're getting, you said, a couple per hour. Tell us a little bit about, so you're really looking for opportunities to invest as an angel investor, and this is a way to kind of get some visibility and get, some real access to deal flow.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, initially I felt 1 or 2 pitch decks a week might have been a reasonable goal. But now, just because of my profile, and it's because of the content that I'm actually posting, it's kind of attracting many of these startup people. And because a lot of the tools that I've built myself, I would say 4 or 5 of the main tools were startup growth tools, and those really attracted startup people to my profile. And I'm getting about 1 or 2 pitch decks per hour. I don't want to mention how many artificial intelligence kids who are 20 years old. I refer to people who are still 20 as kids. I'm getting probably, I would say 5 or 10 artificial intelligence related pitch decks per day now. Those are always interesting to see. A year ago, I would have never thought something like that would have come this quickly, but it has. So deal flow has just been absolutely off the charts. My assistant goes through after we get a pitch deck and does like a preliminary look through the pitch deck to see if it might be a good fit with my investment thesis, which is I'm pretty much across the board in how I invest, but a strong team of founders, something with a little bit of traction, something with a moat that they can't be annihilated if Microsoft decides to do something similar. But the deal flow has just been tremendous, and getting organized has probably been my biggest challenge as the volume has just continually ramped up.
Now, I'd love to hear a bit about how you manage some of these viral posts on some of the practical matters of it. So, I have had a couple that went viral, and it's sort of a little overwhelming. Like, you hope a post does well, but maybe not that well, because if you get 10,000 connection requests in a day, that's can take quite a bit of time to go through them all. And LinkedIn doesn't really have great inbuilt tools to help when you get that kind of volume all of a sudden. I mean, it doesn't have something that lets you say, okay, let me just batch, accept or reject or filter these or whatever. It's one at a time. So tell us about how you are handling the situation when you get all these inbound, connection requests or inbound messages. I know when I had like a couple of these viral posts, the messages were coming in like faster than you could even reply. Even if you're trying to apply one after the other, you'd sort of catch one out of the river of the flow and you reply, and by the time you were done, like 10 more have gone by. So tell us about how you're handling some of these, about some of the tools you're using.
It's like that. Isn't that the military phrase, no man left behind? When I see a message come in and 20 seconds later, it's buried 30 deep. Oh boy, does that give me anxiety? I'm like, ooh, that I just lost a soldier here. So I have a whole battery of tools and CRM systems depending on the type of post, what I'm doing that week. And I could name 3 or 4 right off the bat. So one of the traditional tools, and it's a real CRM, it's called Lead Delta. That's probably, I would say, as someone would consider a traditional CRM system, but Lead Delta is its only function is to help you on LinkedIn. One of the good things about Lead Delta is you can tag, you can star, you can place certain people on the top of your list. It's a really good system if you're getting high volume. The only issue is that it piggybacks off of LinkedIn, so the system is going to be a little bit slow. There's 2 other tools. There's another CRM system called Folk, F-O-L-K. That's a very similar, it has a similar layout if people are comparing to maybe Airtable or Google Sheets. Folk has its own advantages too, because it can enrich certain contacts. So if you're getting information, it has these magic systems where it uses AI to start populating email addresses and different things like that. So Folk is a different animal compared to Lead Delta. If you like to enrich certain aspects. Folk is your go-to system. One of my other go-to CRM tools is actually a bookmarking tool called Raindrop. Raindrop is killer because I'm able to save actual messages into their system, and it has an extension in Chrome. Folk has an extension in Chrome. Lead Delta has an extension in Chrome, but I found that Raindrop was the absolute quickest. When I need to save something in a message, it's one click, it's saved in Raindrop, and I can go about my business. Managing the actual inflow of messages is definitely a challenge, right? Especially when you know you're getting like 10 or 20 per minute coming in. With that, I've had an interesting system too. As I'm replying very quick, sometimes what I'm doing is, if I know there's going to be heavy volume, I may reply with a certain set of keywords, or I may reply with a date. So in my reply, I may put 6.23.23, which indicates, hey, I've responded to this set of people on June 23rd, 2023. So when I have to go back and do a search, I know there might be, a subset of 1,400 people. I know it's a large subset. The other thing I do is, I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but you can download all of your messages through LinkedIn's data system. So you can click on LinkedIn's settings and say, I want to download everything. So if I download the entire database of messages, I think now I have like over 90,000 incoming messages. I can download that into a Excel CSV file, and now I have a system where I can sort all of those by different criteria. So again, all of the CRM tools, everything that happens in the Excel sheet, I'm just looking for ways to filter that and to sort that into as granular of groups as possible. And you can do that. I mean, LinkedIn, their native messaging, I mean, to be honest, it's probably their use case is probably maybe 500 messages or 1,000 messages max. When you start getting up there to 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, and you're reaching like Gary Vaynerchuk levels, which I'm up to, you've got to avail yourself to all these other CRM tools and download. It's the only way to go about things. But at first, when I started getting viral in February, I would say 50 or 60% of the messages were just lost in the shuffle. Now, when the messages come in, there's no person left behind. Everyone's getting the tool that they requested. They're getting it in a timely manner. I have assistants who are going through my CRMs. They're going through the spreadsheets. So, I'm maximizing the volume. No pitch deck is lost. No important message is lost. If somebody sees something that looks important, they're starring it in one of the CRM systems. So yeah, it's been a process getting organized.
So how are you actually getting all those responses out? Is that automated, or are you having your assistants do those one by one, or how?
Yeah, entirely non-automated, which people have a hard time believing. LinkedIn, I'm going to give some insider information. I think you're going to trip LinkedIn's messaging algorithm if you're sending more than about 350 messages per hour and they're all the same messages. So you can do more than that. You can send 400 messages, but you want to be careful in that there's variation. So the algorithm is looking for consistent patterns to say, oh God, this person is using a system like Willaxy or Expandy, something like that. I'm not into all of that automation. I think you don't really need it. But LinkedIn is keeping their eyes open, their algorithm for certain patterns, and they can tell from my messaging that, hey, it looks like he's actually having conversations in between these 75 messages that just went out in the last 25 minutes or so. So yeah, it's entirely manual. Someone might say, hey, the work involved is high, but my assistant goes in to say lead delta, and the assistant is sending a lot of these. So I have assistants. My country of preference is Pakistan to find assistants, and that's a whole nother conversation. But they're working alongside me in lead delta, in interacting in the beginning stages of a lot of these interactions.
Now, does lead delta allow them to, are they actually doing the response in lead delta and then that sends it to LinkedIn, or are they engaging right on the linkedin.com?
No, it's not in the, so lead delta it's the only CRM system that has a third party inbox that mirrors your LinkedIn inbox.
Oh.
So I don't even have to give my assistant access to my LinkedIn account. They don't have access to my LinkedIn account. They have access to this CRM system. You can, if you're someone who's using Pipedrive, HubSpot, one of those traditional CRM systems, Lead Delta syncs right up to those guys too. So Lead Delta has a separate inbox. It gives you a little bit more real estate to interact with people. So if you want to sit inside the Lead Delta inbox, it's much more comfortable. It doesn't have a lot of the other action that LinkedIn has going on, but it's its own third party inbox. I give my virtual assistant access to that, so I'm compliant with LinkedIn's terms of service. I don't like doing anything to violate, since this is my cash cow here now. You don't want to do anything to tick them off. Lead Delta and Raindrop, it's just a glorified bookmark system as well. So you don't have to violate or risk violating their LinkedIn's terms of service. You can have a completely unique CRM environment in one of these different platforms.
So just so I understand it, so Lead Delta then will basically go, reach into your LinkedIn inbox and kind of mirror all those and pull all those messages into their own platform, and then your assistant can be engaging in leaddelta.com, and then replying to those messages, and then those replies get kind of pushed back into LinkedIn and sent as if they were from the LinkedIn message platform, which is really hard to use when you have that high volume.
They tried. I don't know if, so I usually say LinkedIn actually has 4 separate inboxes, believe it or not. So you can opt to have this, what's called LinkedIn's other inbox. And I think in the United States, most people have access to that, I assume. Outside of the US, it may not be completely rolled out, but starting about 6 months ago, I opted to use the LinkedIn other inbox. So now when you have a priority person, it asks you, do you want to move them to this other inbox? So I shift them right over. You also have the ability to star people as well in LinkedIn. Then you can archive people. So I like to say, like, the archive system in LinkedIn, that's its own separate inbox there as well. So I say you have your starred inbox, you have your traditional inbox, you have your archived inbox, and then you have your other inbox. But that's not enough for me. So in Lead Delta, one of the great things is you can tag, you can pin certain conversations so that they're right on top of your inbox. So all of that risk, when you have someone who's running $100 million venture capital fund. I want to keep that person pinned right to the top of all my conversations. That's what Lead Delta does, and you have an unlimited amount of different tags. I set up a almost like a Kanban version of deal flow in there as well that you can do inside Lead Delta. So the amount of, I guess, sorting that you can do and filtering is just fantastic. Even though LinkedIn is putting an effort in that by launching that other inbox, it's still insufficient in my book so far.
How do you go about, maybe it's the same tool, going through all of the connection requests that you get and sort of deciding who to accept? When there's 100 a day, you could kind of deal with that, but 10,000 in a day, it's that's pretty much overwhelming. How do you deal with all the connection requests that you're getting?
It's a little bit easier on LinkedIn's native interface because they give you 100 at a time. So you can just do a quick scan through those. And I mean, you do have to make a fairly quick judgment call. But that brings up another really important point, because most people, when they're approaching 30,000 connection requests, how they direct people to then, I guess, connect with them becomes a little bit different. So most people, when they're approaching 30,000 connections, they say, stop connecting with me. Just send me a follow. Just follow me. Oh boy, do I think that limits you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So when I make the posts on LinkedIn, most of the time I say, even though, and I keep about 500 connections. I have like 29,570 connections.
Okay.
Right. So I always keep about 400 open slots. If Warren Buffett messages me and I don't have an open slot, then oh man, I shot myself in the foot there. So I have 400 open slots. If Warren Buffett comes along, if Gary Vaynerchuk decides he likes me, I'm going to keep those slots open. But what people don't know is, if somebody messages me, that gives me and that individual a private chat room. I now have a private chat room. If they send me a connection request, whether or not I ignore that connection request, if they've messaged me, whether I message them back or not, well, usually I'll message them back. Once I message them back, now we have our own private channel. I'll usually ignore that connection request. That person still feels good because I messaged them back, but they're now in my network. So we can interact. They can talk to me. I can tell them some of the things I'm working on. So my philosophy is, my priority is getting these people to message me in one way or another, because there's a permanent, I would say, chat room that we have now, a permanent private chat room that we can use till the end of time. This person can sell me ideas. I can sell them ideas. We are connected. But if they're only following me and they never send me a message, that person's, I can only send so many messages per day on my end. They're initiating the contact with me, and from that point, I can do whatever I want. They can kind of sit there until I'm ready to say, hey, I got that message. So I might do things a little bit different, because I think that conversation, that initial chat, is just so valuable, because it's a permanent connection, whether or not they're connected with me. And LinkedIn is never going to raise their hand and say, oh, by the way, Brian Ortiz found kind of a loophole here, but I did. So those 90,000 messages, they're increasing my network without having to actually accept someone into that 30,000.
Yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit about the content that you've been posting, and how you are generating that, where you're finding it. Or some of the things that you're posting are these very detailed, like lists of family office and stuff. Are you going out and hiring researchers to build those, or do you find those in some niche and then say it could be good for a more general audience? I'm curious about your content strategy.
Wow. So at first, it, I would say I was even gun shy about posting a lot of these items. Like, oh, what are people going to think? Do they even want this? Um, Once I kind of fought through the imposter syndrome, things sort of opened up a little bit better. But believe me, with 73,000 connections, every single day people are sending me Excel spreadsheets saying, "Hey, I know that you posted a list about investors in the UK. I have an investor list in Germany. This may be of use to you." So that's one way I'm getting them. People are just sending me these lists. Um, the other tool that we use is Taplio. And I don't know if you've heard of Taplio, but it's a tool that shows you other people's highest engaged content. So, I mean, it's like magic. All you have to do is bring up someone's profile, and it's going to give you their 4 or 5 different best posts. So if I see a post that generated 2 or 3 million views and it's gated content, I'll send a quick message to the person who posted and say, "Hey, I have a network that's highly engaged. Would it be cool if I posted this as well?" I might wait a couple days, and then out of that, maybe 50% of those people say, "Absolutely. If you tag me, by all means, post away." So those are two different tactics. Now, I also still do my investing or startup contrarian posts. In my news feed, I think I follow maybe 100 different people. So I'm getting a pretty big slice of LinkedIn every single day. Um, I'm also training my virtual assistant to kind of recognize what I call a high velocity post. If a high velocity post comes along, I may um, I may repurpose and grab different content. I'm combining a lot of content as well. So I may have a subject that comes up with that I know is high demand. Let's say somebody trying to figure out the difference between private equity and venture capital. I may do a hashtag search on LinkedIn. I'll find 5 different high velocity posts, and then I'll combine all of them and create kind of my own unique insights into that subject matter and post it. But I'm getting better and better every month at kind of this engagement process. So those are some of the processes that I follow.
Yeah, that's amazing. What there's all sorts of different points of view out there. What have you found works well in terms of the time of day to post? What's worked best for you?
Uh, so that's again where maybe I'm completely contrarian, and my philosophy is it is completely irrelevant the time of day that you post. I could post something at 2 a.m. Initially, it will get less engagement, of course, if it's 2 a.m. But as 6 a.m., 7 a.m. starts rolling along, the algorithm is saying, "Oh, these people waking up are engaging with the post." People have all sorts of very hard rules that, hey, you need to post that at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. I don't follow that at all. My philosophy is if the post is very high quality, A plus content, it will go viral. The algorithm will start. So for the first hour after you post, the algorithm is determining how people are interacting. Are they saving the post? Are they spending more time in the post? If the algorithm determines it's a good post, time of day, in my opinion, is completely irrelevant. That post that you've done at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, I think that overall, through the life of the post, you're going to have very similar engagement no matter what time you post. The thing that a lot of the gurus do get right is posting frequency. My philosophy is some of the guys posting every single day, you're acting to choke the reach of your posts by doing that. So I try to do, I'm sort of on the lower end. Maybe what I've learned is maybe 3 or 4 times a week is the optimal frequency to be posting, because some of these high volume, high engagement posts, my philosophy is let them cook for 3 or 4 days, let them fully extend, and then from there, your audience. And I just got a message probably 20 minutes ago where someone's saying, "Hey, you haven't posted in 4 days." This guy was actually giving me a wellness check, believe it or not, saying, "Hey,
You okay,
Brian, you
Brian?
okay, man?" I'm like, yeah. I'm letting my last post marinate, amigo. So people do expect a certain volume, but it's also, if you're posting too frequently, this it's almost like the perceived value starts dropping. So hey, value your time and your frequency as much as you can. And just because I don't post, and I'm taking my dogs out in the Appalachian mountains over here, or the Adirondack mountains rather, it doesn't mean I'm off and I'm lost there in the wilderness. It just means that I'm allowing those posts to marinate. But yeah, it's funny getting a wellness check on LinkedIn.
I'm curious if you experience this sort of similar Pareto distribution. Have many of your posts do very well. I mean, I can tell they're getting like 1,000 comments, and I imagine that must be like 1 million views. Are you also seeing the Pareto where you've had one or two that were crazy
Yeah,
high? And then tell us a little bit about
yeah.
the distribution that you see.
What's funny is, um, even though I posted a lot, it's still sometimes hard to predict how the audience is going to react to it. I may flub some posts, and a flubbed post to me is like, you kind of know after the first hour if it's kind of stuck at 10,000 views, and then it just kind of sits there. That's kind of a flubbed post. If your audience enjoys the post after the first hour, it should start getting, and this doesn't, even if you have 9 or 10,000 followers, it kind of follows this rule. If your post is good, you may get 4,000, 10,000 posts in the first hour, but then you're going to see in hours 2, 3, and 4 what exactly is happening with that. So my distribution is, hey, not every one of my posts is going to hit pay dirt and get 500,000, 5 million views, but you're going to know fairly quickly what's happening. And it's funny because the natural instinct says, maybe I should delete that post. Maybe I should post another post in 6 hours. And I found that lack of patience doesn't pay off. You've got to suck it up. If you've done a post that hasn't done well, I've learned you suck it up for about a day. You wait 24 hours, you wait 48 hours, and you go back to the drawing board and you just post something else. But my distribution it's still across the board. Sometimes I think the term I use is like audience exhaustion, especially with the investor lists. You've got to do something different, but the difference has got to be not completely outside of your audience's wheelhouse. It's got to be somewhere in the wheelhouse, but something that you haven't done over and over again. It's like when James Cameron is like releasing Avatar 3 and 4. My God, if he doesn't do something different, you're going to start seeing the box office start declining. But if there's something new, if he's taking the audience back to Earth, if he's not focusing on Pandora, that's like my content. It's got to be something the audience wants, but it's got to be different. And if you follow that rule, you'll see an increase in engagement.
Right. So you can't just say, okay, now I have an investor list for Germany. Here's one for Austria. Here's one for Poland. Right.
If you continually do that, people will start yawning on the other end of their computers. They'll start expecting that from you. Um, it just won't go as viral. You have to do a certain number of things that are different, and you could even do it. Could even be the format of a post. I started doing some carousels. I started doing infographics. I started doing just the content itself. There are some people that solely do just the textual content without any images. And if the content is good, like Jason Lemkin, guys like that, if the content is good, you don't need a associated infographic. But then there's other guys who only do infographics, who only do carousels, to do quite well. My philosophy is mix it up the best you can. Do some carousels, do some infographics, do some just opinions. You know, what's weird is the two worst performing types of posts for me are comedy is number one, and then news related. I tell people you have to earn the right on LinkedIn to be a comedian. And there's a couple guys that got 200,000, 250,000 followers. They've earned the right to be comedians, and their posts get 2,000 engagements on every post. You can't start off on with 1,000 followers and think, hey, I'm just going to post memes like those big guys. But they get by posting comedy, posting news-oriented stuff. Those are things that you have to actually earn. And I've learned that the algorithm, it's very unforgiving. If you have 2,000 followers, you can't just be someone who projects artificial intelligence news 24/7. It's not going to give you the engagement. So once you get that huge base of like 50,000 followers, you can start mixing in. And I'd like to think my sense of humor is pretty good. But it's the worst performing stuff that I have. That's when I stagnate at like 10,000 views, when I think, oh my God, I am the funniest guy on the planet. And then I do a post and it's like, oh, I guess my audience didn't think so.
So you want to mix it up in terms of the format and so forth, but you're saying, your kind of group of followers and connections is in that kind of investing, startup, VC kind of world. And if you do something that be completely off topic, even if it's great content, that also might not, resonate very well. So you want to kind of stick within a general topic area.
Absolutely. And you want to be careful, because if one of your posts doesn't resonate with people are going to click. There's like a little button that says like mute or even unfollow. My joke is that if I post a post with my picture in it, man, I get like 15 unfollows right off the bat. I'm like, trying to explain to my significant other, what do I need to do here? But you have to be careful. I posted a congratulatory post when I got 50,000 followers. That cost me about 25 people, because no one wants to hear you congratulating yourself. I learned that the hard way. So yeah, there's some rules that say if you're doing something outside of your audience's comfort zone, buyer beware, because you're going to start losing some followers.
In terms of preparing and getting the content ready, do you are you doing that all yourself? Do you also have some assistants helping you kind of get those drafted, written up, pulled together?
Everyone tries to find that holy grail where they're just like, I want to automate this entire process. And I've got to say, from my perspective, the philosophy of trying to automate content creation, it just, the long-term results are just not as good. I sit there by myself for an hour, burning the midnight oil, and I try to create something that's high value. Um, my assistant comes up with some pretty good ideas, and it sparks some thoughts. So the assistant plus Taplio, those two things help the initial thoughts. But when it comes down to actually drafting like the insights and things like that, I'm the guy who has to do that. I don't really trust anyone else to go through and kind of ghostwrite my own thoughts. I don't know how intelligent that philosophy might be, because the ghostwriter is going to try to mimic you, but I don't know. I don't know how close to your own voice they can get in, and I just prefer to kind of be authentic as I can.
Brian, for listeners that want to keep track of what you're doing and follow you, we can certainly include your LinkedIn URL in the show notes. Any other places that you would want to point people online?
No, LinkedIn is that's fantastic. That's my ideal spot, and um, engage with me on there. It's a primary platform I'm on, and I'm always welcome for new people and new perspectives.
Amazing. Can you give us any stats? Like we can see visually there that you have, 70,000 plus followers, and it sounds like that's come just in the past, few months, right? How you want to share
6 months.
Yeah, 6 months. That's incredible. Like how many views have you had altogether? It must be an extraordinary number.
Um, I think it's approaching about the content views have approached like 20 million. The number of people who have looked at my profile is probably 50,000 to 100,000 people over the last 6 months. The number of inbound messages is over 90,000, and I don't know if I mentioned it on our recording here, but you can download all the messages. So those are just some of the metrics that have happened over the last 6 months. And
Wow.
before that, man, my LinkedIn was a ghost town.
That is incredible. So that is such a great example of how, you start sharing some stuff and you can really, you don't know what to expect, but you can really, some very amazing things can happen, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Brian, I have so much appreciated this conversation with all these valuable tips. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Will, the pleasure is mine. Appreciate it, sir.